You've tuned in to the 49ers Rush podcast, and here is your host, John Chapman.
All right, thanks for turning in to the 49ers Rush podcast. I'm your host, John Chapman. Today I'm excited. We're moving on to one of my favorite 49ers. If you're just now joining us for the first time, thanks for joining us. It's been a lot of fun so far going into each one of the 49ers draft picks in depth. We've already covered quite a few guys. We've got the first 5 in the books, and we are now moving on to, again, going to be a huge 49er fan favorite, and that's George Kittle, tight end out of Iowa. We selected him in the 5th round. The second pick in the 5th round, number 146 overall. He was the 8th tight end taken. So what we're going to do, we're going to cover a little bit of background, what he's been through at Iowa, kind of his family and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to move into what it means to be a 49er with John Lynch's 6 traits to be a 49er, see how he measures up with that criteria. Then we'll jump into the fun stuff, the film breakdown, my favorite part, break down his blocking and his receiving, kind of what he brings to the table, and then we'll finish up with scheme fit, what he's going to look like being a 49er and how he will contribute to your team and what to look for. So let's jump right in. Again, George Kittle, absolute beast, this guy, 6'4", 247. He's what we call a move tight end, which means he plays a tight end position, but you move him around all over the place, and you hope to get him in mix-match situations, whether that's with a linebacker or a safety or a corner or something along those lines, depending on what it is you're wanting him to do. If you're going deep, you want him to be matched up with a linebacker or a safety. If you're doing kind of like a blocking or a short route, you want him going in against a corner because it's just a mismatch because he's so big. So he has played all over the place. He's played a traditional tight end role. He played at Iowa, and they are a huge run-heavy team. And so he's played the traditional tight end where he's got his hand in the ground right next to the tackle, and he was used primarily as a blocker. Sometimes we'll see it as a wing tight end, which instead of being on the line, he'll be right behind the tackle, and so he's a little bit off the line, which helps give you better angles. You can bring him back across the line, almost. It gives him a couple steps ahead in the pull to the opposite side. You've seen him play fullback. He's played slot receiver, lined out wide, and he's even played sniffer, which you don't really get to see in the NFL. It's very similar to a fullback role, but instead of being 2 to 3 yards behind the offensive line, they call it a sniffer because you're sniffing the guard or the tackle's butt. Like you're right behind the guard or the tackle. And what it does is it just creates a great cross angle so that you can get better angles on the blocks against the defensive tackle. And so he's played everywhere. And, you know, coming out of Iowa, it's interesting because guess who he was roommates with? Another brand new 49er, the quarterback that we drafted, C.J. Beathard. And they were roommates for 2 years. And funny little tidbit I talked about on C.J. Beathard's podcast is that they got along great and they were really good friends and still are great friends. And the only thing that they would actually fight over or not agree on was watching Pokemon. Turns out Kittle is a gigantic Pokemon fan, and the quarterback, CJ, he never wanted anything to do with it. And so that's about the only thing that they would really fight over. You know, you got to catch them all. It's Pokemon, man. That's what it's about. Anyway, let's get back to Kittle and kind of what he is and what he brings to the table. He crushed it at the Combine, and he showed us exactly how athletic he is. He tested in the upper 90th percentile for all tight ends and both the 40-yard dash and the broad jump. Those numbers, he was in fact the 3rd fastest tight end, which is pretty remarkable if you look at the top tier tight ends that we had. We had 3 tight ends going to the first round, all of which are considered to be receiving type tight ends. And he ran a 4.5 240, which again was the 3rd fastest 40. And then even better than that was his 11-foot broad jump, which is something that measures basically you stand still, almost flat-footed, and you explode as far as you can. And what it measures is how explosive you are in kind of your hip and thigh power. And he was 6th best in the entire Combine at that, which is just, you usually don't see that from the tight end spot, but he is extremely explosive. Now, he didn't test well at everything. Super small hands, which seems to almost be a theme with the 49ers draft. We drafted Trent Taylor, receiver out of Louisiana Tech, super small hands. This guy, super small hands. And the funny thing is usually you want your receivers or people that are going to hold on to the ball to have giant hands because it means they fumble less and they can catch better. Well, not really a problem with Kittle or either one of the receiver either, because Kittle only had one drop out of 48 catches, and so he is going to catch. He's very, very sure-handed, and he catches the ball with his eyes. We'll get into that a little bit later, but anyway. And also, he's not very good at changing speed. He didn't even test in the shuttle, short or long shuttle, or three-cone, but I can guarantee you if he did, it would have been awful. And you can see this on film whenever he runs routes. He's a straight line speed kind of guy, very tight hipped. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle. He's not juking people with the ball. This guy is a John Lynch type of mindset and a blocker / speed tight end body, which doesn't seem to make much sense, but it's what he brings to the table. Now, he's got a lot of history playing football. This guy, he's a third-generation Iowa Hawkeye. His father was the team captain for the Iowa 1982 Rose Bowl team, which is just awesome. His cousin is actually playing in the NFL right now as a tight end for the Broncos. He's the third tight end for the Broncos. His name's Henry Krieger Cable. You don't see him very much. He's more of a special teams and goal line type of guy, but he played at Iowa as well. So he completely understands what it means, and he's got somebody really close to him that he's going to be able to rely on and figure out what it means to be a pro. And so super safe in that regards. And then plus you add in the fact that his best friend is a quarterback that he's going to be working with in practice and all that kind of stuff. So awesome support system around there. Another great thing is Kittle just graduated in December from Iowa, so he is completely done with college. I know every time we draft one of those Pac-12 guys, they have to miss all of OTAs and some of training camp, and they come in behind. Not the case here. Kittle has already graduated, and he is going to take part in all OTAs, and he's ready to go. Now what I want to do is I want to look at what John Lynch laid out. He put this card together. It's 6 traits to being a 49er. We're going to go through each one of these, all 6, and we're going to figure out how is it that this kid measures up. And again, this guy, he's got fan favorite written all over it. He is tough, tough, tough. So the number one thing Lynch says to be a 49er, you need football passion. Do they love it? This guy absolutely loves football. He had injuries in his first 2 seasons to his foot at Iowa and missed a lot of time. Didn't get a lot of playing time. And he decided whenever they were interviewing him, his very first 49ers interview, he said, you know what I had to do is I had to decide to cut out almost my entire social life and focus 100% on football. Change his eating habits, quit hanging out on the weekends, drinking, all that kind of stuff. He gained 25 pounds of pure muscle and focused his body to be prepared so that he wouldn't get injured again. So, football passion, does he love it? Yeah. If you're willing to give up your social life in college, I'd say you're passionate about it. The number 2 trait, contagious competitiveness. And if you've read anything up on this kid, you're going to see this quote. They asked him, what's your favorite quote? He said, moving a man from point A to point B against his will is the greatest feeling you will ever feel. And he said that he takes that to heart, and man, it just gives you almost chill bumps thinking about it. And you can see why John Lynch loves this guy. And he added on to it, he's like, hey, whenever you can force somebody to do something they don't want to do, it's a great feeling. And the fact that you can't get arrested for it and it's legal to do this makes it even better. So he's got a little bit of a sense of humor, but he totally gets it. So that's a complete check mark there. Number 3, dependability and protecting the team. Probably one of my least favorite things when people interview players is when they ask them about somebody else. I just feel like it's disrespectful, but it's part of the game. And so they're interviewing CJ Beathard, and they ask him, tell us about Kittle. What do you know about him? And I hate it when they do that. This kid's worked his entire life to be in the spotlight. Like I want everything focused on him. I feel like he deserves it. But anyway, one of the answers that the quarterback gave is he said, you know what, Kittle doesn't care about yardage or touchdowns or anything. He has no problem showing up and blocking as much as he did. Never asking for the ball or any of those things. Puts his hand in the dirt and just goes out blocking. And so again, unselfish, all about the team. All about the team. So check mark there. Number 4, mental toughness. Again, I mentioned he had 1 drop out of 48 catches. And as you watch this kid's film, he's a very aggressive blocker. And I'll point out some flaws that he has in his blocking game, technique-wise. But you're not going to make all your blocks. Sometimes you'll block your guy into the ball carrier on accident because the ball carrier bounces, it doesn't go through the design hole, so on and so forth. But if his guy ever made a play, you'll see him slap his hands together afterwards and kind of be, just like, damn it. You'll see him kind of say that. But the next play, it's almost funny because if you see not even a mistake, but things don't go perfect for him, the next play, it's like, all right, here goes. Who's he going to kill? because he seems to take everything personal and he goes and makes the correction, which is just beautiful. So huge check mark there. Number 5, football IQ. Man, I tell you what, we're seeing some early trends with this offense. Kyle Shanahan, he seems to know what he wants, and that's people from pro systems. He doesn't seem to want that gigantic learning curve on offense. The football IQ is there with this kid. Played in the pro system at Iowa. He's running option routes consistently, so you can tell that he knows how to read coverage as a receiver, which is huge. And whenever he blocks, it's much more complex than just, hey, I got this guy, I'm blocking the linebacker. But rather, you'll see him scoop block consistently. And what that means is you don't just block the linebacker. You have to reach across the linebacker's face and put your body between him and the play side hole or play side gap and seal him off. And so it's almost like that advanced level of understanding what your role is on this run play. And the kid gets it. He understands what everybody is doing, motions consistently. You'll see him constantly telling receivers, you're on the line, you're off the line, even though he's the tight end. Like, he understands the whole. And so there's going to be zero issues with football IQ with this kid. So that's 5 for 5 so far. And the last one is accountability to other players and themselves. Again, I talked about how he missed a lot of time in his first 2 seasons. Again, the quarterback, C.J. Beathard, said, it was really, really hard for him to be on the sidelines. And the reason why it was so hard for him is because he couldn't help his team out. He had to be out there with his family, and just being on the sidelines was just painful to him. And so, again, he is there for them, and the necessary changes that he had to make to get to be healthy, again, giving up social life and gaining 25 pounds to be able to do that. So this kid is 6 for 6 as far as John Lynch is required to be a Niner. So you can see why they target him and why they went up to get him. Now let's jump over to our film breakdown. Now, pro comparison for this guy, and again, as I watched him, it just screamed Dallas Clark. The longtime Colt, so many catches, just catch after catch after catch. Now, what's crazy is if you go back and you look at what Dallas Clark measured out as, he is almost 0.2 40 times faster than Dallas Clark. So thank Dallas Clark, and maybe not as much wiggle, but more speed and just as much toughness, and probably a better blocker, to be honest with you. Hopefully, he's not going to play that role in our offense because we're just not going to throw the ball that much, but he has that potential. Let's start with his blocking first, because if you've watched Iowa, this is what they do. They block. It is the traditional Big 10, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's what they do. Run, play action, throw. Run, play action, throw. Run, play action, throw. And there's a lot of plays where you don't even see a receiver on the field. You'll have an extra tackle, and you'll have 2 tight ends, a fullback, and they just load it up. So it's very different, but he blocked a lot, and he excelled at it. Very capable blocker, uses his technique and his feet very, very well. Again, understands sealing the blocker, so it's not enough to just engage with the defender, but you have to turn and put yourself in between the defender and where the ball carrier is going. So that way, not only do you maintain your block, but you're creating that hole. He's a John Lynch type of tight end to a T. And man, when you watch this guy, one of the films was against North Dakota State. So the Bison actually beat them in Iowa. That's Carson Wentz's old team. You don't get to see him on TV too much. But anyway, he's basically the end man on the line of scrimmage as basically a wing tight end. So there's a tight end, and then he is off of the tight end about a yard behind and a yard off to the side. And he blocks out on the cornerback. And he's not even 10 yards close to where the ball carrier is trying to go. So he blocks out on the cornerback, he engages him, and just keeps driving his feet for about 10 yards. And he drives him all the way to the sideline. There's not another player on the football field 15 yards from where they're at. And the ball carrier is getting tackled, he's still blocking, and then pancakes over the top of him. And this is a regular thing for him. You talked about that quote about moving somebody from point A to point B against their will. He does this on the regular. So many times on almost all the big plays that they have running the ball up the middle, it is right off of his butt because, again, he's not just engaging where the defender can still get his hand out and kind of slow down the ball carrier or try to get the ball. He turns the defender. So he blocks him and turns him so that zero contact is made. So huge on the key block, and you can see that a lot of their design